Hi, folks who are joining. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight. We're just getting going. We'll wait a few minutes for folks to trickle in. Thanks so much for choosing to spend your evening with us. We know you could be anywhere and you've chosen to be with us. So thank you for that. We'll just wait another minute or two for folks to join us and then we'll get started. We've got a really great agenda ahead of us tonight and a great discussion and great panelists. So we'll just wait another minute or two. If you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, send your LinkedIn profile. It's always a good chance to network and connect with other folks who are interested in similar topics to you. So feel free to put that in. And I think we'll go ahead and get started here. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have a great discussion ahead of us on building your mentorship toolkit. And as I said before, we know you could be anywhere else tonight. So we're very grateful that you've chosen to Zoom into this event with us. I'm excited to bring you into a conversation about what it means to be a great mentor and how to build up the skills and I think also the confidence to begin your journey as a mentor. At WCS, we believe deeply in the power and the potential for impact through mentorship, and we're so glad you're here to learn more about that. Next slide, please. I'm Elly Reed. I'm a board member with WCS, and I'm also the certification director at another nonprofit called Climate Neutral, where I focus on helping hundreds of companies define and begin ambitious and urgent climate action. At WCS, I'm the co-chair of the Career Development Committee and very proud to volunteer my time for an organization that I believe is really pushing ahead to foster women's impact in the green economy. You probably know us most through our events where we bring experts from across the sustainability and clean tech industries to the table to talk about all sorts of topics. Next slide. We also run a number of programs, and tonight I'm delighted to tell you about our annual mentorship program. We pair women early in their sustainability careers with seasoned professionals in a 3-month program for dedicated mentorship, career guidance, skill building, and lots more. Mentors and mentees meet one-on-one throughout the program and gather as a cohort for 3 deep dive events on topics like negotiation and personal branding, communication styles, and also gather together to share insights and do some professional networking. As part of that, we've been running the program for 6 years now and really built up a fantastic experience for mentors and mentees. Our applications are open until November 30th, so definitely take a look if this sounds interesting to you. It's definitely relevant to the topic tonight, so we'll pop a link in the chat to learn more about this. I'm going to pause really quickly because my dogs just opened the door behind me and I'm sure you can hear them squeaking on a squeaky toy, so give me 1 second. All right, never a dull moment of real life here on Zoom land. Okay, so before we dive in, just to run through, next slide, just to run through a couple of housekeeping items on our virtual event. We're probably all pros at the Zoom etiquette by now, but just want to make sure that you're keeping yourselves on mute unless you're speaking. We will open the conversation up towards the end for Q&A, and I'd love to have you all jump off mute and ask your questions live if you'd like. We're a pretty small group tonight, so I think that's totally fine. We'd love to see your faces on video if possible, and certainly encourage everyone to, as I said before, introduce yourself in the chat, share your LinkedIn, and we'll all get connected. All right, next slide. So on to the topic you're all here for, which is mentorship. Throughout my career, I've benefited from having wonderful, dedicated mentors, and I think felt firsthand the positive impact that working with a mentor has had on my career development and leadership abilities. It's important to me that everyone, and especially folks in this critically important industry, have that same opportunity to work with a great mentor. So building on that, WCS has proven time and again that everyone, and all of you on this call, has value to offer as a mentor. Everyone, I think, has the capacity to be a mentor and give those around them and give to those around them. And maybe you're already doing this and don't even know about it. So we're going to talk a lot about that tonight, along with lots of other mentorship topics. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Theo Fesenfeld. Theo is currently pursuing her MBA in Sustainable Solutions and Social Justice at Presidio Graduate School and continuing to grow her career as a composting system design consultant. Theo is one of the most organized and thoughtful people I've ever met, with a true ability to read people, to respond. I'm so grateful to work alongside her on the WCS Career Development Committee. Theo's been one of our most dedicated volunteers on the committee. She leads the mentorship program, or she has led the mentorship program for the past 2 years. She is stellar, and I've learned so much from her already. I can't think of anyone else more passionate about mentorship to lead tonight's discussion. So with that, Theo, over to you to introduce tonight's panelists.
Well, thank you, Ellie. What a heartfelt introduction. That's the first time I'm hearing that. Welcome, everyone. My name is Theo. I am so excited to be here tonight to talk about mentorship and to help you all learn about how to become a better mentor. And I'm really excited to introduce our panelists for the night. We're going to start with Susan Lucas Conwell. Susan is a global business executive and independent board member recognized for her successful track record of driving innovation, accelerating revenue growth, both in the US and in Europe. She is currently a non-executive director at Sparrow, a UK digital media startup focused on democratizing science by providing curated, updated research to the public. She is also acting executive director of De La Pena Motorsports Next Gen Foundation, whose mission is to inspire girls in underserved communities with opportunities in the motorsports industry. Previously, Susan opened and built the North American Innovation Center for CSRO, Australia's preeminent national science organization. And she has organized hundreds of early stage startups, scientists, and founders in areas as diverse as water, health tech, energy storage, and space. Susan has won numerous awards, including Frost and Sullivan's Innovative Spotlight and Silicon Valley's Business Journal's Women of Influence. She earned an MBA from Wharton School of Business, an MA in Economic History from the Johns Hopkins University, and a BA with honors from the University of Wisconsin. In addition to her professional accomplishments, she is the mother of 4 daughters and a competitive masters rower. So thank you so much, Susan, for being on the panel tonight. Susan also was part of the mentorship program last year. So if you want to bring any questions to her, feel free. Then I would like to introduce Lena Weissman. Lena is a longtime marketer and communications leader in the clean energy sector. She is a senior strategist with experience in multiple sectors, including sustainability, solar, energy storage, and software solutions. A seasoned business building executive with P&L, sales, operations, and marketing experience, Lena has helped companies along the renewable energy supply chain thrive. Her professional roles are diverse: entrepreneur, executive leader, consultant, and mentor. All of these roles have been fueled by a desire to midwife the manifestation of a company's climate-friendly mission. She has been a strong advocate for women in the solar industry, a noted industry speaker, and byline author. Thank you so much, Lena, for joining us tonight. And lastly, we have Carrie, who is from the faculty of Presidio Graduate School. We're so happy to have her join the WCS community. Carrie's professional experience spans corporate environments, nonprofits, educational institutions, and startups. And as a marketing practitioner and educator, Carrie is passionate about bringing industry relevant experiential learning to the classroom and working with purpose-driven organizations committed to equity. Carrie is the director of the Center for Transformative Action and teaches marketing courses at the Lori I. Loki School of Business and Public Policy at Mills College and at Presidio Graduate School of Business. Carrie also co-designed a digital marketing program between Facebook and Peralta Community College District. Carrie was recently awarded a Love Takes Action Award by the New York Life for her role in supporting small business in the Bay Area during COVID. Carrie has a BA in anthropology from UC Berkeley and an MBA from Mills College. So that gives you a breadth of kind of the experience and experience that our panels have tonight. I'm so excited to have them here. I just want to take a moment to talk about the snowball effect that mentorship can have on young women as they navigate their careers, especially in the BIPOC community. Research confirms that quality mentoring relationships have a powerful positive impact on young people in a variety of personal, academic, and professional situations. 1 in 3 people will grow up without a mentor. And this has a lasting impact on health, job satisfaction, and overall happiness. And at WCS, we are taking steps to build an inclusive mentorship program, one where mentors feel supported and know how to give the best to support their mentees. So this was the whole reason for kicking off this event to start. Our applications are rolling in currently for the mentorship program. And without further ado, I would love to just start off by asking my first question, which is just about, asking the speakers, where did you start as a mentor? Where did it all begin? And, in the sustainability space, and how has your role evolved over time throughout your careers? And feel free, if anybody wants to jump in, Glenna, I'm looking at you, but if there's someone else who feels inclined, go right ahead.
Well, okay. Welcome everyone. My name is Lena Weissman, and I just am so grateful that you're all here, and I feel very honored to be in the company of these amazing women. So my mentorship experience in the sustainability industry started really in the solar space. When I started to see that I would go to these events and there was hardly, the percentage of women was so small, you had to look around the room and find them. And we had a luncheon and there was only a few tables. So this is around the 2008 timeframe. And so I started to look around and say, I can make a difference here. And if that difference is me pounding the drum on there needs to be more women, and how can I mentor more women, and how can I mentor the organizations that are involved in the industry to have a bigger impact, that's where I started, with a desire, at least in the sustainability industry, with a desire to see a more diverse room of people. So I'm going to popcorn it over to Susan. Or was that Carrie that chimed in?
It was Susan.
Susan, good.
So I'm on top of you on my screen, so to speak. So I think so. First of all, I'm not an expert in sustainability, but over the course of my 13 and a half years of life, because I'm extremely young and getting younger as I get older, it has come up in so many different roles. And I think the way I would describe the journey of mentoring for me as part of my professional career, when I started to run organizations. When I moved here from Europe in 2005, I ran an organization that was a tech ecosystem, essentially for startups, developers, and everyone in the tech industry, called SV Forum. And so being in the center of that hub, I was often asked for connections, and I had to advise startups on their pitches because we did pitch events 4 times a year. And so very quickly, I realized that instead of just saying, oh, do this, do that, do this, do that, and I think this will come up as we talk about mentoring, I felt that it was much more important to ask people, well, what does success look like to you? And I think that's a fundamental question to ask in the relationship. And so I went from running an organization where people thought that I had context and I had the keys to the kingdom, to actually changing that relationship to be one where I could help advise and I could mentor in sprints. And that was mostly around startups, but as an organization, we did the first ever water conference in Silicon Valley. And so that was a time when I mentored some of the women as well as men who were speaking, and some of the organizations that were presenting and helping them to figure out what they were really looking for. And after that program, and then going forward, individuals, entrepreneurs, and mostly women would come up and say, well, you know, could you help? Could you work with me for a little bit? Could you coach me? Could you support what I'm doing? And so it went from a role where I was in the center of something to making introductions, to developing a relationship and then extending that relationship.
Yeah, so seeing it from more of like a networking context and, you know, allowing the, you know, new startups to kind of answer their own questions, give more open-ended mentoring advice rather than just telling them to do one thing or the other.
That's right. And then as time went on and I changed and I evolved into different roles in the sustainability space, I've mentored in agritech and in digital health and a lot of work in energy. And so that has gone into different pieces. So for example, with early stage scientists looking to solve global challenges, not being an expert in the technology, but helping them to figure out what they really want to do and what that looks like, and being a sounding board. And so it's moved with me. And then much of it has been with entrepreneurs, but also with individuals, mostly women in middle management, who are looking for women who've had more experience. Probably we've burned more fingers, and so we can at least share some ideas of things to avoid along the way. And so helping in those different ways. And each mentor-mentee relationship is different.
Right. So I'll hop in here. Last but hopefully not least, I would say my mentorship journey in the sustainability space started more on the social impact standpoint. And I'm thinking years back when my very first job my very first real job was coaching ice skating, and thinking about some of the skaters that I coached, primarily young Black skaters and girls of color that had oftentimes never seen a skater that looked like me or a coach that looked like me, and working with them, you know, not only on the ice, but off the ice, and just really being a important probably representation, recognizing that my value is to show them that they can be great and in anything, that they can go into spaces where people don't look like them, and that they belong anywhere. And so to me, that's kind of informally how I probably started off when I think about my earlier influence on people, because, you know, how I define mentorship, and I know we're going to probably get into this, but it's around influence and teaching and supporting and helping. And so that just, you know, came up for me when I reflected on kind of my own entry point. And more traditionally, it's in the world of academia. So I teach at schools that are committed to social justice and sustainability. And so for me, I am mentoring at scale, thinking of so many students, you know, probably upwards of 100 that I'm meeting and connecting with each semester, and honing in on ones that are interested in marketing, because that's my function within the business world. And so I'm coming at it from that angle of how can I support people that are interested in changing the world, and showing them the importance of communicating that and what they can, you know, how they can find careers in communications and marketing and whatnot. So that's, you know, my entry point into mentorship around sustainability is, you know, again, from a more less formal, but I think very important lens of academia, and, you know, trying to reach people that are also interested in the marketing function.
Yeah, so I hear, I mean, Carrie's coming from mentorship, using within the classroom, maybe on the ice skating rink. Glenna is coming at it from, within the solar industry, within, a primarily male dominated field. And, how can I bring more women into the space? And then, Susan is looking at it from, within a company, how does mentorship look different than it would if, it was a family friend or, even a child? I know we've talked a little bit about the juxtaposition of parenting versus mentoring within a corporate area. But do you, Glenna or Susan, do you want to, I know that Carrie touched a little bit about the definitions of mentorship or your definition and how it's evolved over time. Do you kind of play off of a definition currently, like within your work, or any mentor-mentee relationships you currently have? Take it away.
I'm happy to jump in. I haven't, I think we use the word mentor and coach. In one of our panel discussions, we talked about parenting. For me, mentoring is very much about active listening and being the person who helps a mentee be grounded, offering input and guidance, as opposed to this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it. So those are different. So I don't really work off a definition so much. I think in today's world, it's really important to define what the relationship looks like, what the expectations are, and what success will look like, and to bound it. Otherwise, it can drift easily into other things that aren't helpful as a mentor. It doesn't mean that they're bad. A mentee could become a really good friend. That's fine. But making sure that it's taken seriously and that there are concrete results is important. It's also important for both parties. So each offers and brings to the table, and each takes away. Each has expectations, and the expectations can be tactical. Are we talking about once a week? Are we talking about an hour? Are we talking about every 2 weeks? Are we talking about professional, personal? Where is it that this relationship adds to what you already have in your life?
I agree with all that Susan just said. And it seems to me that there are real similarities in terms of the starting base of how we are as authentic humans. Because we show up in all these different places in our worlds and in business and social and charity work. And if we're not really listening, if we have this expectation that we're putting forth over the situation of what we want out of the situation. So for me, mentoring, and we talked about this parenting thing because my son is older now. And so the whole parenting dynamic shifts with time. And for me, this all starts with trying to be as clear and as self-aware within my own being of what my prejudices are, what my emotional triggers are, what my expectations are, and to move past those, to create a spaciousness within my own being that can allow me to truly hear. Because if we really need to hear the other person that's involved in the dynamic, and this can apply to clients and professional and all that. So I work a lot in the mindfulness arena. I'm working on my inner MBA with NYU around the whole mindfulness concept in leadership, because I think that we start with us. So this is really important to me to be grounded and be authentic and know when my amygdala's been hijacked and I'm really coming from a whole different place that I don't want to be coming from. So that's the biggest place. I also agree with Susan in terms of expectations, and there's also clear boundaries. I think we need to be really clear about what we can give as humans, within the situation in terms of time and talent and resources, and get to know the word no, because no is a full sentence. So, I think that's really clear. So we've already talked about the success thing. Carrie, can I just move back over to you and see if you wanted to add on to your definition?
Sure. I'll just say that, as far as the evolution of it, and how it's changed, my opinions about it. I used to, when you hear the concept, the word mentorship, I think for a lot of people, it probably seems very formal, right? Like maybe there's a program associated with that. There's an agreement, there's set times, there's rules. And so for me, that's initially, what I thought about it. It's only when I reflected on, well, when did I first start doing this, that I realized it's something I think we all do in different ways throughout our lives, because we're all trying to influence and guide and teach. And then I think it's great because as we grow and gain more skills and enter professional spaces, there are more programs for it, like this amazing one that you're offering, that we're that we're going to learn more about at the very end. And so I think that's great. It's so important, especially when we're talking about pathways to navigate our careers within institutions. So I think that formal mentorship is very, very important. And so I would say that, again, my definitions around influence, guidance, direction, and that mentoring is just someone who teaches and who advises and who helps. So again, that's very expansive. And I think it's, exciting when we think about so many people can, be helping change the world by giving back, and that people are enough at most stages of development. There's always someone younger than them who can need their support and advice. So anyways, that's kind of how it's shifted for me, recognizing that, again, it can be done within a program that's more formal, and then also done in ways that are more informal. And I'll also end on, one of the best ways that kind of, one of the best insights that changed how I view mentorship was a mentor that told me you can't get everything from one person. And so that oftentimes we look for, kind of like this messiah figure, this person that we feel like is perfect professionally. And that person doesn't really exist. And so oftentimes we should view going to different people for different things. So we might go to one mentor who's great with finance, or maybe they've negotiated some, really big moves within their career, right? We're talking to them about areas that they're strong at. And maybe those people don't have great family relationships because they're workaholics and they've been successful in one realm, but not in another. So then we talk up to the person that has a wonderful family situation that we see as very loving towards their children or their spouses. And so, getting different things from different people, I feel like kind of frees us up to find that one single person. And so that's, I just want to pass that on. I feel like that was really helpful advice for me.
Yeah, so far we've kind of covered the breadth of the experience that you all have had within your different industries, and also how mentorship has been defined as you've kind of grown as a mentor over the year, through personal development in the MBA, and then also your own relationships and kind of learning how to navigate that. I would love to hone in on like a specific example of, a mentor-mentee relationship that, was particularly memorable to you, either through the good or the bad. What did you take away from that mentoring relationship? And like, what kind of nuggets of wisdom would you bring forth to, anyone who's looking to become a mentor? Yeah,
I can start, Theo, with that one. So this happened to be a young man, so we'll just be gender diverse in this particular example. And what he taught me was that each side has to do their part. Each side has to show up. And he got himself to a solar show as a volunteer. He happened to be at a panel that I was speaking. And he approached me and said, I would like you to mentor me because I want to be in this industry and I don't know how to approach it. So we worked together, and we still work together now. So this is an example of having a goal as a mentee, having some kind of direction that you want to go in, and Carrie's point that not one particular mentor is going to, maybe cover every one of the areas that you would like to get help with, but then show up for yourself. Do what you need to do. Have that 20 seconds of courage to do whatever it is that you need to do to step in the direction of where you want to go. And then you'll know that you will meet and get to the person that you need to get to. And so I think as a mentor, if I'm going to invest my time, I want to see that the other party is making an effort, that they're showing up, that they're doing their part, because we can't make somebody that really, mentors do not want to be trying to do things for you. They want to encourage you, help you to discover what you should be doing, but not doing them for you. And I would love to hear from Carrie and Susan on this point.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the parenting thing. You don't want to just do things for your kid and not empower them. You want to empower them, but you definitely don't want to do it for them.
I think I would add to that. I completely agree with you, Glenna. I think the mentor-mentee relationships have worked the best, and I also see there's a question in the chat about boundaries and goals, which are important questions. Is being clear about what it is, right? So as a mentor, is it, in your case, Glenna, because of your experience in the solar industry, because you were recognized, and because you had knowledge of a specific industry? Is it about a change in life? So I have, over the years, mentored people who've worked for me, who've started their careers, and helped them think about where they want to go next. I've also mentored a lot of entrepreneurs about what that looks like and what it means both personally and professionally, and because it's very different from being in middle management or a large company, or being a consultant. And where those boundaries are clear and where the goals are clear, those are the best relationships. Where they're not clear, or where there are unexpressed expectations, and that has happened once or twice, where in fact, in one case, there was an expectation that because of that relationship that I would either help them get promoted or get a salary increase. So there was actually a hidden agenda that wasn't about mentoring. It was a different agenda. And it wasn't, at least in my book of mentoring, it wasn't the appropriate agenda. And the other cases where mentorships have been less successful have been where they've also spilled over into phone calls at 11 o'clock at night. I can't handle this. I can't do this. Like, wait a second, we agreed we were going to talk about and help, work for a period of time, and we talk once a week. And this, I can understand, happens and know it's happened, having been an entrepreneur myself. But it can happen when all of a sudden you become, and Carrie alluded to this as well, the go-to person. This investor did this. This person said this. How should I respond? What do you think of this email? It's like, this is not, I'm not stepping into your shoes and being your senior advisor. And so just being very clear about that to begin with is important. And it can change over time, but both parties need to agree to those changes. I'd also like to just jump in and add a nuance. And the nuance is, for those of you who are thinking to yourselves, well, how can I be a mentor? I'm not an expert in the solar industry. I'm not, a professor like Carrie. I'm not an old fart like Susan. So how can I be a mentor? Well, we all have something to give in a relationship. What's important is that in that mentor-mentee relationship, there's a distance. So I think it's kind of hard for a brother and a sister to be mentor-mentee. where there's a past or a significant history, where somebody is your current boss, that's kind of tricky. Could be a previous boss, could be somebody who's left a company, but the relationship needs to be on neutral territory. And so it isn't really, I don't think at least, about age or specific experience. It can be about something that you've done or know, and you can share your journey with somebody else. And you could even be equal. I know that when I've built teams, it's been really, really helpful to take the person who's been on a team for a year or 2 years and ask them to mentor, not just train. That's kind of old fashioned, but kind of mentor a new person and say, hey, why don't the two of you work together and share your learning lessons and answer their questions so that they too can be a success. So it's nuanced.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Susan, all about, there's so many different pockets that we can mentor, and we don't need to be experts in the field to mentor. And that's something I think that's pulling through more and more during these COVID times. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next with our economy, with our world. And like the more that you can help people navigate their individual situations, the better. So I don't think it's a better time to become a mentor. And Carrie, if you want to add on to anything that we're discussing, feel free.
Sure. Well, I think what came up for me when Susan was, talking about just the back and forth relationship, of a mentee and mentor was, the importance of reciprocity. That's really just the key to being a human, is kind of that back and forth agreement that's unspoken oftentimes, but just, within that realm of you are enough. Oftentimes if your mentor might be a different generation, often, sometimes they're going to be a generation ahead of you or two. And so there is certainly some really fascinating perspective that you can share with us to keep us relevant and, connected in different ways. And so some of my best experiences have been when mentees, again, mine is a little bit more informal, so I don't always have to create the same boundaries that some people do. But when they have come to me and shared information about what they're doing at work and connected me to resources that I then go on and, share with my class, and it becomes this beautiful feedback loop and circle. So I would just say that absolutely, you to kind of Susan's point, you are enough where you're at. And one thing that also, the question around boundaries and specific, goals. And I know Susan, and Glenda can speak really well to that. But I would just also say that, I think as a mentor, if we also let our mentees know what we want to talk about, and our strengths and what we can, where we want to focus within the relationship, that perhaps that's also a way to not have those boundaries get, blurred, and to have them calling, mentees calling at 11 o'clock at night, asking you about things that you're really not, you don't want to discuss. And so I think that kind of came to mind as, far as what, how can we maybe initiate letting our mentees know that what we want to also cover. So that's it.
Great. Yeah, that's a really good segue. I would be interested to ask if there's, any other tools or tips or tricks that you use to kind of foster openness and trust with your mentor, with your mentee. And yeah, anything that you've used over the years to kind of begin to kind of help your mentee dig deeper into what exactly is the success that they want. So if you have any thoughts on that one, we can do that one as well.
Well, I can start us off here. I mean, I think there's a lot of techniques that are available. Visioning work, vision boards, questioning lines that originate with start with why, and all of these kinds of things that are geared toward having an inward view. Geared toward, because the answers to each person are not out here. They're really not. Those are the authentic answers come from within us. And they then can resonate with other information that's out there. But I think that the most powerful thing we can do as mentors, as friends, as colleagues, is not to foster our point of view on someone else, because their own authentic journey is theirs. And so I think what we do is bear witness to that, and we hold it in a high point of view of possibility, instead of saying, oh, well, that's impossible. We might ask, how are you going to get there, and what's the steps, and who can you pull in to make that happen, but not rain on their parade with some kind of negative sort of voice that that's not possible. So I just believe so strongly that the answers are within us, and that our job is to try to help unearth those. And when we stand in that place, it's a powerful place. So.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit in our previous discussion about like using the word should, and like you should do that to, get there, and you should do that. And I think that is a transformation in the mentorship, arena, in the sense that I think mentorship used to be exactly that. Like, oh, you should do this to get from A to point B. And I think, things have just gotten a lot more complicated, and people are starting to pursue, I think, more authentic career paths in some ways. But I know that Susan touched on that a bit, just the idea of, telling someone rather than showing them. So I'd love to hear more on that.
I think it just to build off of what Glenna said, the art of active listening and avoiding solutionizing is probably the trap that mentors fall into. Oh, have you thought about this? Well, why don't you do this for next week? Is really important. And particularly when you've been very active and perhaps you do have experience in an area that the mentee is working in, and you are bursting with, well, that's ridiculous. You can't go down that path. You've got to do this path. Like, nope, that's not the point. So really, and Glenna had mentioned that she's doing her inner MBA. It is a process for the mentor of making sure that you are doing that and listening. And if ideas come up in a session and the mentee doesn't follow up, that's up to them. It's their life, it's their decision. So it's also not helicoptering in to try to correct, or what is also can be a tendency. Of course, it would never have happened to me, but just putting it out there. It's like, well, last week we talked about this and you said you were going to do this. What do you think about that? That is leading the witness. So the neutral, enthusiastic, supportive, grounded behavior of the mentor is really important. And so I think that's really important. I was going to add two things. One, I saw Kelly, who had asked if we'd ever said no to somebody. I've never actually said no to somebody except when I don't have the time or I don't feel I can add. And both of those things happen. If I don't, feel that I'm really going to be helpful and I'm the right person, that's a very easy thing to say. It has happened more often that I just don't have the time. And so that I haven't said, oh my God, no, nope, find somebody else. That hasn't happened. The other piece that I wanted to bring up, and it just came up recently, I was part of a mentorship program that was a group program. And so it was 1-to-many, so 10 mentees. And if you're in a program or if it's a setting, I would really encourage everyone to think about, mentees learn from each other too. And so in the session that we just did last night, instead of, God speaking from the high mount, Susan, in other words, right? And what have you thought about, what about this? It's like, okay, let's this was the end of a program. People were talking about personal branding and executing a strategy. So, well, networking is really important. Let's all talk about, just spend 5 minutes, think about what you'd like to share, your learning lessons. And honestly, I think that my role in just bringing that up and then having everybody share their experiences was probably more meaningful than if I had tried to pull out from each individual, or if I had tried to preach about networking and the virtues and what you could do and what you might do. And so if you're in a program and there are a lot of mentees, share. We learn from each other, and we'd have no, gift. There's no God's gift to people about mentoring.
I'll just throw in that I agree. Peer-based learning, it's so powerful. Mackenzie started cracking up because that's PGS is built on it. It's just fascinating, the discussions that we have and the different insights and perspectives students are able to bring to the classroom. So to me, my job is to be a facilitator and to nurture people's abilities so they can actually contribute in these larger discussions. And it's like a communities of practice approach, right? Where we're learning from one another because we're all practicing. So that's it.
Take Susan, Carrie, Glenna off the pedestal. Hard to do. But I just want to wrap up this discussion a little bit, touching on the positive impacts that mentorship has had on your life as a mentor, and what does that two-way street look like for you? I would love to just hear kind of why you keep coming back. Obviously this is not a paid portion of your job. This is an addition. Like Susan talked up about before, she's not available to herself, every hour of the day. Why would she give that to someone else? So I would love to just hear about, why you keep coming back to being a mentor and what it has given to you. And Carrie, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So, gosh, I was really thinking about that, and for me, it's one of the most rewarding parts of what I do as an educator is connecting these bright folks with roles that hopefully, are good fits that they've, and exposing them to opportunities. So back to that piece around, Glenna's talked a lot about, just the power of, just trying to nurture and not tell what to do, not, provide overly avoiding solutionizing. To me, it's about, exposure and how do I connect them with other people that can then perhaps deepen the learning and continue the experiential process, right? So they can land where they ultimately will be joyous. And so for me, I would say I get a lot out of just knowing that people are moving on into careers that they're happy with, and also just staying connected. Again, it's that reciprocity, that back and forth. What I get as far as being able to have students come back and talk in my classroom after they've started amazing companies or gone on to land these great roles, and now they're hiring students. And so for me, it's just what kind of the circle of life. I just watched Lion King with my little one recently, so that's the analogy that I'm coming up with. But so I think it's just great to connect with more people and to get to know other people. So that's what I get out of it is just community.
Yeah, and I remember you also talking about how you mentored someone and then they ended up recommending your husband for a company, or there was some connection there, and there was kind of like a friendship created out of a mentoring relationship, which was cool to hear.
Yeah, great one. I'll speak to that. So that was, I guess, one of my first almost formal mentors out of my MBA. It was my entrepreneurship professor, who was just super dynamic person. And he wound up recruiting me to work at his startup. And so he became my boss. And I found actually upon reflection that some of my best, leaders of organizations, people I've reported to, have been like mentor figures to me. So I think that also speaks to people in management, treating people that are, that they're managing, really caring about their development, because that's, the best way to have a great company culture. And so this person, became, mentor figure. And ultimately, my husband was in a role, recommended him to be the consultant on a project that led to an acquisition. And now he's my husband's CEO. And so he's my, my husband's mentor. And so now he's like our familial mentor, to our family. And it feels really great to just know that someone, over a decade truly cares about our family. So I think that just kind of goes back to, I'm glad you brought that up, Theo, the power of, mentorship and nurturing those relationships over time, and you never know where they're going to go. So. All popcorn to Glenna.
So I have an example that I want to share briefly where I mentored an employee to help her move out of the company we were in, because we both saw the writing on the wall in terms of what was happening with a really toxic situation. And I was on the front line of that, being on the senior management team, but I wanted to make sure that she was okay. And so we were very authentic with what was going on. And this is not your normal situation. I would not recommend this necessarily for, what you would normally get involved with. But as a personal example of a situation that really did my heart a lot of good, was to see her go on to another situation that lasted for years, and we're still friends now all these years. So sometimes, like Carrie's example, you don't know where this mentoring adventure is going to take you. And if you're in the situation on the call tonight where you are on the mentor side and you're considering that, and you want to maybe get involved with the Women in Clean Tech mentoring program, then know that you have so many experiences that you can draw upon. And you can step into this place of seeing what this adventure might bring to you. And in that particular situation, it brought me a lot of joy. It brought me a lot of, and a long-term relationship with someone that I hold very dear in my life. So you just never know where this is going to take you. And I also want to mention real quick that there is so much curiosity in my own soul that to see what people come up with, and to, it's like walking into a garden and looking at all the different flowers and being really excited about what that all is about. It's like there's this like natural curiosity of what is blooming in each of these people's lives, and bearing witness to that. And that helps us stay out of our own heads. It helps us see there's a wider vista. And so I invite you to that journey. And over to Susan.
Gosh, I love that garden example and how you're kind of watering the different parts of the garden and helping it grow. So thanks for that, Glenna.
Ditto. I think I would add, to go back to your question, I actually didn't have any mentors for many, many years. And then at some point, one person who was actually a coach became an kind of an interim, intermittent mentor. And that was something that was missing. And I think that management styles have changed, and the way we deal with professional relationships have changed. There are more coaches and more support systems. They aren't necessarily perfect, but they exist much more than they did, let's say, 20 years ago. And same for mentoring. So I really think that what both Carrie and Glenna said around relationships is important. I think that we learn from people who are different and complementary and at different stages. So in every relationship that I've had with a mentee, whether it's been short or long, I've learned because they're coming from a different place. They have a different perspective. And so understanding that has been very enriching to me. I also feel that for those of us who have experience and have relationships and have something that we feel we can give, that impact is important. And if we can carry that over, that's far more important than climbing a little micro step up a ladder. It hopefully will, as with the flowers and the watering and the seeds, bring change at different levels. And people are what are going to drive that change. So if we who have some experience and have something to give can help drive that positive change, so much the better. And it isn't necessarily about age or specific experience. It's about life, and it's about that journey. So I will just add to that while I completely agree that mentoring is not parenting, having 4 daughters and watching them grow and trying, maybe successfully, maybe not, to be both a parent and a mentor and a support system and a cheerleader, you kind of learn the different pieces. So, and it sounded like Kelly from earlier has the mentor for her life. So have at it. That's great. But having that impact and seeing positive change happen, that's really what counts.
I think that might be a great question to end on, but I would love to just ask one more, which is just specifically, what's one question you wish all mentees would ask you, when you start that relationship? Is there something that is kind of impertinent to starting, a healthy mentoring relationship?
What comes to mind for me, Theo, is, maybe also just asking earlier on, how can I also support you?
Yeah, just playing off that reciprocity again, it's definitely a two-way street, and kind of creating that circularity within the relationship is really what's going to foster it long term. Susan or Glenna, do you have any thoughts on that?
Just building off what Carrie said, it's what does success look like for each? Like at the end of this, what will we say about what happened and what we learned or what we didn't learn or where this took us?
And I would add that if the mentor has not explained what their boundaries are and their time limitations and their expectations, I would say ask. It's kind of like when you're on the call with somebody important or a boss or somebody, and you say, what's your hard stop for this call? It's such a simple question, and yet it's so honoring of the other person's time. Your hard stop is X. Okay, we're going to stop that. Just a simple human honoring, I think, is important.
Great. And then we'll just have one more question before I get into the questions in the chat. And this is totally off the cuff, rapid fire questions, but in 3 words, what makes a good mentor to you? And, just the 3 words that come to mind. I know that you've touched on many, but I would love to leave the audience with kind of that takeaway.
Vulnerable, open, trusting.
I'd say humble, active, and participating.
Authentic, listening, honoring.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to our 3 panelists tonight for engaging in this conversation about mentorship and how to build our mentorship abilities. I want to touch on a couple different questions in the chat. I think there's one question from Vasuda. It talks about, what are some reasons that someone would ask or look for a mentor? I know you touched on this a little bit, Susan, with, career changes and, if someone wants to Glenna also talked about someone moving out of a company. Is there any other instances that a mentor is a valuable tool to engage in a certain life transition?
Something comes up for me, actually. So I think of the importance of negotiations, especially for women starting off their career. Actually, at any point in their career, I shouldn't even say starting, but particularly that first salary negotiation when you get that big person job. And so one of the things I loved about going to Mills College and learning about women's leadership and some of the unique challenges that we have as women leaders, and just women in the workplace, centers around sometimes communication and how we're not as likely to toot our own horn. We talk more in plurals about we's and don't take credit the same way. And it also extends to not always recognizing our value when it comes to negotiating a salary or just taking what we're offered. And so I've definitely seen, I've had people reach out to me about salary negotiations, and which is stemmed into other discussions about how to be strategic about setting themselves up to climb the ranks, and so I don't know, negotiations comes to mind for me, especially because that's one way. Great book, Women Don't Ask. I think it's a classic that just kind of talks about the pay gap, and a lot of that starting off with this negotiation point. So I'd say that's oftentimes when you really need a mentor, is someone to help guide that first large job and negotiating your salary and ensuring that you're thinking about how you can move up the organization.
Yeah, Kelly, do you want to speak to your question briefly?
Oh, I mean, we've all felt the pain. Oh, sorry, I'm lucky enough to sit across from Sarah Fuentes, who needs to mute her computer.
I can take the question too. So, yeah, so Kelly is asking about, how do we overcome the challenges of finding more female mentors? Coming from oil and gas and the old boys club, it took me a while finding WCS to even catch a glimpse of what real mentorship was. So I know Glenna touched on that a little bit, and she's unmuting herself.
So I just want to go back to the other question first from just 1 second. Hold on 1 second, Kelly.
Yeah, definitely.
I two instances that I can think of where I have had a lot of folks asking and have ended up being in a mentoring situation. One is transitioning from one industry to another, because and how to unearth the skill sets that are applicable to both, and then being able to move those skill sets and communicate those skill sets, which relates to the second one, which is women traditionally look at a job resume and think, oh, well, if I can't do 90% or 95% of the job, I'm not going to apply. And statistically, men say, oh, I can do 50%, I'm applying. So, I think that that's another area that relates to Carrie's argument around point around the money and valuing ourselves. I think we women really need, at any stage of life, need to shoulder and help value each other. So maybe Susan's got more on that another instance that we might want to talk about.
I would just add to that. There are situations in people's professional lives where they feel alone and where they don't have a support group. And so that is typically, effectively, in organizations where you are the only woman at your level. I remember years ago when I was running Bosch & Lomb France, and they set up a mentorship program. It was a joke. And so they had to look around the world, and they finally found one woman at my level in Rochester, New York, who was in corporate communications. It was like, you have to be kidding. So the second choice was even worse. It was a crusty old guy who had his own opinions about young women, or women, my guess is, of any kind. was going to be my mentor. I was like, okay, I think I just really want to opt out of this program. It was useless. It was worse than useless. So I think there are situations where individuals, and sometimes for women, it goes back a little bit to Kelly's question, is where you feel like you're alone. It's also really true as an entrepreneur. When, you know, as an entrepreneur, who are you going to tell that you don't think you're going to be able to pay salaries at the end of the month? Not a lot of people you can talk to. So when individuals are in that situation, mentoring can be really helpful. And then to go back to Kelly's question, I think there are actually lots of programs now and lots of organizations that reach out to women that are focused on women. Julie Abrams has a great group, How Women Lead. Obviously, Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability. So looking around and almost Googling different groups, and in those groups, seeing what kinds of programs there are for mentoring, or just looking at those who are, as Glenna said when she was speaking at a conference. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? You know, somebody who say, "Oh my God, she's amazing," is going to say, "No, I don't have the time." They're not going to bite your head off. So no harm, no foul.
All right. Well, I think we kind of covered that last question with that answer. Is there any other questions that I have from the audience? We can start to turn it over to Elly to speak about the mentorship program. And Carrie, Susan, Glenna, if you have any last final words, now is your chance.
Thank you for having us. It was a great panel and a great group.
Yes, I enjoyed reading both of you ladies. You're awesome. And I would just say to those who were looking for mentoring, don't be afraid to ask. And don't be afraid to ask for help when it comes to trying to juggle all the various plates we women try to juggle all the time. So there you go.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful. Thank you, Elly McKenzie, who reached out to include me in this important discussion. It's been lovely meeting you, Glenna and Susan, and other folks here. I'll put my LinkedIn contact info in here, so please connect with me. I love to meet other folks. And yes, just know that you're enough, and please start mentoring. That's the best way to learn something, is to teach it. That's what I was told by a mentor who recruited me into education from the world of practicing. She said, you'll get that much better at what you do. So you will, yes. So join us as mentors. Thank you.
All right, Elly, you want to jump in? And speaking of which,
Great.
If you want to be a mentor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess before we jump into that, I just thank you, Theo, so much. Thank you to our panelists, Glenna, Susan, Carrie. You've each shared so much wisdom with us tonight. So just pulling out a couple of the nuggets from the chat and the questions that seem to really resonate with folks. The idea of mentorship at scale through many different relationships, of active listening and helping mentees be grounded as individuals. We talked a lot about boundaries around mentorship, both what's on the table to talk about and work on, and what we as mentors are also capable of giving, whether that's about a topic or an amount of time. We talked a lot about formal versus informal versions of mentorship, which certainly begs the question, like, where in your life are you already mentoring? Are you already being mentored? And starting to reflect a little bit on those interactions and relationships. I really liked the idea of helping and enabling mentees to find the answers themselves and being careful that we're not solutionizing for them. We're stepping into their shoes and just doing the work that they really need to find a way to do. And then, of course, the idea of reciprocity and vulnerability in these relationships to really make them impactful in a two-way sense. We certainly learn from sharing our stories from each other, whether in formal relationships or not. And certainly the many ways in our lives or situations in our lives where mentorship can be beneficial. I thought the most common thread throughout is this idea that we do all have the capacity to mentor, to lend our experience or our ideas, sometimes just our active listening skills, to be that sounding board, to allow a mentee to work through a challenge and find their way to a solution. I think that's so, so powerful, and ultimately really comes back to, I'll highlight a line that Carrie used. It comes back to caring about people enough to help them land where they will be joyous. I just love that. Thanks, Carrie. So thanks once again to our panelists for being here to reflect on your experiences. We're so lucky to have the chance to hear from you tonight, and I'm hoping, and I know that you've inspired some of the folks in our audience to lean into their roles as mentors. So I'd like to remind everyone that we're currently accepting applications for our upcoming mentorship program. And if becoming a mentor in a more guided and formal program sounds interesting to you, we'd love to have you apply. The applications close on November 30th. And I forgot to mention before that, as a thank you to our mentors in the program, this year we'll be giving mentors a free virtual membership to WCS for participating in the program and working with a mentee. So please apply and take advantage of this. All right, next slide. I'll also just share that we've expanded our membership options, and now we do offer virtual membership for anyone interested. And we also just added a referral program. So if you're currently a WCS member, you can share this code on the screen, WCS Refer 2021, through the end of the year with friends, and each person who signs up will put your name in a hat to win an awesome WCS prize. Also, as a virtual member, you get lots of member benefits, access to our events calendar, free and discounted access to events, access to members list for networking and finding mentors, and also access to new job listings. If you're a student, we also offer a 30% discount on membership, so reach out to us to learn more about that. Next slide. We have a few more events planned for this year, so keep an eye out in our newsletter to sign up if you're interested in our annual holiday party. I think there'll be some ugly sweaters, and I'm actually really hoping there are pets with ugly sweaters at that event, and lots of festivities for that one. We're hosting an environmental justice panel to round out the calendar year, and our first event of 2022 will be focused on breaking into clean tech, so very much in the mentorship vein, and we hope to see you there. Next slide. Last, but certainly not least, thank you so much to our volunteers for making the event possible tonight, Theo for moderating, Mackenzie and Vasuda for producing tonight, and Bailey for help with marketing. WCS runs on volunteer support. We can always use more volunteers, so if you're interested in getting involved with that, from that perspective, definitely reach out on that too. WCS wouldn't be possible without your dedication. All right, last slide. Finally, please also remember to join us and follow us in the virtual world, join our newsletter to stay in touch. And that is all for tonight. Thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you soon.
Elly, there was a question in the chat. Maybe you can answer in the
thanks.
chat at least.
I didn't have that.
I got back to
Thanks,
her.
Elly. Is anyone online signed up to be a mentor for this upcoming WCS mentorship cohort?
Not that question, my friend. That's so kind.
Oh,
But
that one's from you, Kelly.
Yeah, the one from another who's asking if you can be a mentee 2 years in a row.
Oh, good question. Sophia, why don't you reach out to me, careerdev@womencleantechsustainability.org, and we can talk. We haven't considered that before, but I'm certainly open to it. Great. Any other questions? Thanks, Mackenzie, for posting that. That's helpful. We can stay on for a minute if there are any questions. Great. Thanks, everyone.